Welcome to Fiction Shorts with Chris. And today I'm being joined by Amanda Cabot, and I am so excited to talk about book two in the secrets of, and I want to get it right, Sweetwater Crossing, Against the Wind, which by the way, I'm going to hold it up again because the cover is gorgeous. So, um,
Isn't it a great cover? Chris, thanks so much for inviting me to be here. It's always such a fun time to talk with you.
oh, thank you. That was very kind of you to say. So tell us a little bit about Against the Wind and or the series. Tell us all about it. Where do you got going this time?
Well, it's obviously a series, it's a trilogy. There are three books with three different sisters. And it all starts with After the Shadows, which has another one of these fabulous covers. And if you look at that, you'll see that there's a house. Now, that house is not something that you would expect in the Texas Hill Country, which is where these books all take place. And in fact, some of the people in Sweetwater Crossing aren't real thrilled with the house. They think it's a little pretentious. But there's a whole story behind the house. The house was built by a man from Alabama who fell in love with the hill country, wanted to bring his fiancee with him. And her father was a plantation owner in Alabama. And he said, "Oh, no, you're not taking my daughter there unless you can give her a house that's comparable to what she's living in." So he builds this house. Then the war between the states starts, and this man, Clive Finley, leaves, presumably to join his friends and family from Alabama as they fight against the War of Northern Aggression. You know that. Clive never comes back, and so the house is turned over to the Vaughn family. Pastor Vaughn was Clive Finley's very, very close friend, and when he leaves, he says, "If I don't come back for some reason, I want you to have the house, and meanwhile, live in it while I'm gone. You've got a big family." Well, Clive never comes back. And so the pastor raises his three children. And what we're dealing with is what we would currently call a blended family. No two have the same two parents. So we get a lot of interesting sibling rivalry as well as this difference in parentage that motivates the various sisters. First book, After the Shadows, here comes the cover again, is the story of the oldest sister, Emily. She comes back after her marriage ends. She comes back, and because of some things that happen in the first book, she says, "We have to turn this house into a boarding house." Well, her youngest sister, Louisa, is, to say the least, not happy. And Louisa says, "Hey, I'm out of here." And she heads off to Cimarron Creek, which some readers may recognize as another one of my fictional towns. She goes to Cimarron Creek to become a doctor and a midwife. And she is trained there by Austin Goddard, one of my former heroes, and Thea Mitchner, who has her own book. So she's there for over a year. She's coming back presumably only for a few days. But along the way, literally, there's a man in the middle of the path, in the middle of the road. She finds she's coming back. She sees this body and, of course, has to get out and find out what it is. Well, the man, he's our hero, of course, is he's dehydrated, he's close to heat stroke, and he has a really badly broken leg because his horse threw him. Horse has disappeared. So what's Louisa going to do? Well, of course, she's going to help him. I mean, she's a healer. This is what she does. And so she gets him in the buggy, takes him to Sweetwater Crossing, sets his leg, and now she's got a problem because she can't leave for 6 weeks. I mean, she's got to stay until she can take the cast off because, she's not going to say, "Here's a saw off your own cast." So she's in Sweetwater Crossing longer than she expects. Meanwhile, Josh, our hero, is the son of a very influential family in New York. They own what his grandfather calls the New World's answer to Fortnum and Mason's. It's a specialty food store. Grandfather is close to retiring. He has two grandsons, Josh and a cousin. And he says to the two boys, one of you is going to take over the company. And the way I'm going to decide that is who gives me the best idea for taking our company, Porter and Sons, into the next century. Well, Josh knows what he wants to do. He is traveling the United States, searching for recipes that are unique to America from different regions. His idea is, instead of having this be a really continental type business, he's going to have an American room that features these special foods. So he's been collecting recipes all across the country. He's reached Texas. His horse throws him. His horse disappears. So not only, and notice the horse had saddlebags on him, all of the recipes were in there. So at this point, Josh doesn't have anything. He's stuck for 6 weeks in Sweetwater Crossing. And I mean, the clock is actually ticking, obviously. What is he going to do? So that's where our story starts. How it ends, well, you'll have to wait and see.
You're going to have to find the ending on your own by reading the book, right?
I can't tell you now.
Oh, man. No, one of the reasons I love your stories is because you tell a very sweet story. You do. But you throw some unique elements in there. And the first one that always hits me is you always have some sort of a little bit of a mystery, whether it's a murder mystery or something, whatever. So in your writing, does the mystery idea come first, or does the historical story and then you add the other?
Oh, actually, they sort of come at the same time.
Oh,
Because I like having, I mean, I write historical romance, but I like to write more than just boy meets girl. Because our lives are so much more complex than that. I don't want to oversimplify it. And so part of the conflict that I like to build into stories is the mystery. And that's why this whole series is called The Secrets of Sweetwater Crossing, because there are secrets. I mean, in the first book, it was a murder mystery. And it was who killed the minister, who killed Emily's father. In this one, it's who is trying to keep Louisa from succeeding as a doctor or a midwife. I mean, she's facing resistance in both realms. The men, of course, just don't think a woman could possibly be a doctor. One man flat out says they aren't strong enough, as though physical strength were everything that you need.
right.
But the women, some of the women are also reluctant to consult her as a midwife.
Well,
And there are
that's interesting.
two things at play. One is a mistrust, a saying that, well, women have been having babies on their own for centuries. And she's there shuddering, going, yeah, and far too many of them died when they wouldn't have had to if they'd had professional help. But the other thing is the story about a prophet in its own town. She's Louisa. She grew up there. They knew her from the time that she was an infant. And so it's hard for them to accept that she's an adult now, a very well-trained, capable adult. And so she's facing a lot of problems. And then we've got a person who just flat out does not want her to be either a doctor or a midwife, who believes that what she should do is get married, stay home, raise children. And Louisa knows she can do all those things, but she can also be a healer at the same time. And so the secret is who's behind some pretty bad things that happened to her and why.
We won't tell.
We won't tell. We'd spoil the secret.
So one of the other thing I was going to ask about is because it's the other thing I enjoy about your books is your female leads are very strong. They're also very feminine. Don't, they have children, they get married, they, do the typical women things. But they have usually something unique that isn't typical for what we would think of as history time. I mean, think of Louisa. She's a doctor. You don't think of women doctors. So what makes you want to add that part to your stories?
Well, part of it is that although I'm writing books set in the 19th century, and by the way, I love writing in the 19th century. There are so many fun things to do about it. We'll forget stuff like they didn't have indoor plumbing and they didn't have microwaves or air conditioning. And I mean, remember, we're writing about Texas.
Yeah, I wouldn't
So
have survived back then,
we're
by the
going to
way.
gloss over those things. But it was a different lifestyle. You had the small town, small communities where church was the center of town, where people helped each other. There wasn't a lot of, well, weren't a lot of new people coming to town. People didn't leave all that easily. So take all of that. And then we have these ideas of the 19th century, which are that, well, women just stayed home. And I wanted to play against that because there were women doctors. Yes, there were few of them, but they were still there. And the problems that Louisa faces, the lack of acceptance, to some extent still exist because of her being a woman. So I'm taking a modern theme, but putting it back in the 19th century so that people can see that fundamentally human beings haven't changed. I mean, the same conflicts, the same problems existed in the 19th century that exist now.
That is really interesting. So, yeah, I think I have read books with, women doctors and stuff. So, but for you to say that, no, there were a few. I mean, now it's, what is it, 50-50 or something. But yeah,
But
so it's
even,
interesting.
well, I mean, I've had women doctors before
Yeah,
uh, in
yeah,
my books.
yeah,
and and they have faced similar problems because it's just not, it wasn't done then. And so people were breaking out of well, my heroines were breaking out of the stereotypes and having to fight for what they believed in. And that's one of the messages that I like to have, is to say that, if you have a dream, if there's something that's really important to you, don't let anything stand in your way. Fight the obstacles, overcome them. Or like my heroine, I mean, she's literally on top of the world there. And she is fighting against the wind. And there are
yeah,
times when she feels that she is being pushed backwards, but she has to keep fighting. Yeah, that's
yeah,
what I want my heroines to do.
yeah. And they do, and that is a really good message. Um, that you bring all of us. I don't care what age we are. That because we don't stop dreaming when we get older. Um, yeah, I like that. So thanks for sharing that. So okay, so and you mentioned it earlier that not only this series, but you have sent Louisa to a town you have written about before. What is it about this area that you really like to write about?
Hill country is beautiful. Um, there are hills, obviously, but one of the main attractions for the hill country are the wildflowers. This is where in the spring you see fields of bluebonnets that they're so extensive you think it's a lake. And
Oh,
there are bluebonnets on this cover.
there are.
It really helped me out with that. Um, so it's a beautiful country, part of the country. It's also an interesting part of the country because it was founded uh, a lot by German immigrants. And so you've got the whole German mentality of, we will work really hard and we will succeed. And that was good. It's also one of the things that makes it easier for me to write at certain times is It's not a part of Texas where it was highly Confederate. So, I mean, some of, the people did fight in the war, but it wasn't an area with a lot of slavery, so I didn't have to deal with that because that's obviously one of the more painful portions of American history. I didn't have to write about that, um, but I could still be true to the area.
Interesting. So, and here I thought it was going to be something simple like, well, I lived there. So,
Well, I did live in a small town in Texas until
oh,
I was 7 years old, but it
okay.
wasn't at the hill country. And my parents actually never took us to the hill country. So
Well, there
uh,
you go.
I first
So,
saw that when I was, I don't know, 25, 30, somewhere in that range.
isn't that fun though? But like I said, that I love that answer though, and just the flower answer. I've heard that before about the bluebells and stuff there. That someday I'm going to make it to see that. So, so
Well, you need to go in a spring where they've had a lot of rain
okay, that's good
because
to
that
know.
makes it particularly beautiful.
Awesome. Well, that is very good to know. So, I'm going to ask you two questions kind of at the same time. First of all, I know this is book two of a series, so you have a trilogy. So I want to know, or let the readers know if I have to read them in order or if it's just best I read them in order. And if you can tell us maybe the title of book three and when it's due out.
Okay. Um, I like to write my books so that you can read them as standalones, and you can read these books as standalones. However, I think you'll find it better to read them in order. And the
Okay.
reason for that is that there is this continuing mystery of what happened to Clive, the man who built the house. And also the sisters, this is the first time I've done this, but I have the three sisters, done that before, but I'm bringing them all together ultimately. So we start off with Emily pretty much by herself in After the Shadows. Then Louisa, the youngest, comes back in Against the Wind. So now I've got two of them together. And the third sister, Joanna, who's the middle one, comes back in Into the Starlight, which is the third and final book in the series. This is when people get to find out what really happened. I mean, we resolve the major mystery of Sweetwater Crossing. That book is scheduled to be released July 16th of next year. So it's less than a year's wait. But it's been so much fun having the relationships build on each other because we start with one sister, then we get two, and then we bring the third one back. And so we see them, but of course their lives are very different than when they were children. And they're all older now. They've gone through some pretty tough times, but I'm bringing them back together. So short answer, you can read them in any order, but it's probably better to read them in sequence.
And I agree with that. I'm really glad I got to read these in order because book two does give a little bit of Emily's story away. So, um, yeah, I recommend them in order too. So, but well, thank you so much for joining me today, Amanda. That was a lot of fun to listen to, and I always enjoy talking to you. You're a lot of fun. So,
We do. And again, thanks for inviting me.
you're very
It's fun.
welcome. And we will try to get this organized and do it for book three. Then we can just do the whole series together and give away all the secrets.
That's right. Yeah. Well, no,
No.
we won't give them away.
Yeah, see, you people that listen, you think I want, I'm the one giving the secrets away. The authors are very good about keeping the secrets. So,
Again,
well,
thanks for inviting me.
you're so very welcome and anytime, Amanda. And I hope to see you soon. And thank you all for joining us today for Fiction Shorts with Chris. Have a good day.